The day you stop explaining yourself, something shifts. People look at you differently, not because you said more, but because you didn't. Most people think explaining makes them understood. It doesn't. It makes them look uncertain. And the moment you sound uncertain, people start questioning your value. So if you feel the need to justify yourself all the time, this is exactly why you're losing power. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Every time you over-explain, you're not clarifying, you're seeking approval. And people can feel that instantly. You might think you're being logical, even helpful, but what others hear is doubt. They hear hesitation. And hesitation lowers your perceived value faster than almost anything else. Because confident people don't rush to explain. They assume they are already understood. But when you start adding extra reasons, extra details, extra justifications, it signals that you need others to agree with you. And that's where the shift happens. Respect begins to fade silently. Not because you're wrong, but because you look like you're trying too hard to prove that you're right. And the harder you try, the less convincing you become. It's subtle, almost invisible, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every extra word starts working against you instead of for you. To understand this, you need to see how people actually interpret behavior. In social dynamics, perception is everything, and perception isn't built on what you say. It's built on how you say it and how much you feel the need to say. When someone is truly confident in their decisions, they don't feel the pressure to explain every detail. They state things clearly, and then they stop. That pause, that silence, is what signals certainty. But when you keep talking, adding layers, trying to cover every possible angle, something changes. It no longer feels like clarity. It feels like compensation. And people pick up on that, even if they can't explain why. They start to sense that you're trying to control how you're perceived, instead of simply owning your position. And that subtle difference shifts the power dynamic completely, because the person who explains more is often seen as the one with less power. Not logically, but instinctively. Think about it. In a meeting, the person who speaks briefly and decisively is usually the one others listen to, while the one who keeps elaborating, trying to make sure everyone agrees, slowly loses authority with every extra sentence. The same thing happens in relationships. The more you explain your actions, your intentions, your choices, the more you invite judgment. You give people space to question you, to analyze you, to doubt you. But when you say what needs to be said and stop, you create a different effect. You leave no room for negotiation, no signal of insecurity, just clarity. And clarity, when it's delivered without excess, feels like strength. That's the mechanism most people never notice. It's not about saying less randomly. It's about removing the need to be validated through explanation. And once that need disappears, your presence starts to feel different. Heavier, more grounded, more certain.
Now, here's where most people go wrong, because this behavior shows up in ways you don't even notice. First, you explain your decisions when no one asked. You say things like, "I chose this because," or "I did it this way since," thinking it adds clarity. But in reality, it signals that your decision alone isn't strong enough. Second, when someone questions you, you rush to defend yourself. Instead of answering briefly, you start building a case, adding reasons, context, justifications, and the longer you talk, the more it feels like you're trying to convince, not communicate. Third, you try to prevent judgment before it even happens. You over-explain to avoid being misunderstood. But ironically, that fear creates the exact impression you wanted to avoid: uncertainty. And then there's the subtle one. You fill silence. The moment there's a pause, you jump back in, adding more words, more explanations, just to keep control of the situation. But that silence was never your enemy. It was your leverage. Every time you remove it, you remove your presence with it. And all of this comes from the same place, the need to be seen as right, understood, accepted. But the truth is, the more you try to control how people see you, the less control you actually have. Because now you're reacting, you're adjusting, you're explaining, and people can feel that shift instantly. It's not logical, it's instinctive. They start to place you lower in the hierarchy without even realizing why. Not because you lack intelligence, not because you're wrong, but because your behavior communicates uncertainty. And in any social environment, uncertainty is always interpreted as weakness. Now, here's where everything changes. The moment you stop explaining yourself, people are forced to interpret you differently. When you make a decision and simply stand by it, without adding layers, without trying to soften it, something shifts. People start assuming you know what you're doing, not because you proved it, but because you didn't feel the need to. That's how power works. It's not displayed through effort, it's felt through certainty. And certainty doesn't speak loudly, it moves quietly. So instead of explaining, you replace it with clarity. Short answers, direct statements, no extra justification. When someone questions you, you respond, but you don't perform. You don't try to win them over. You just state your position and let it exist. And yes, at first it will feel uncomfortable. Silence will feel heavy. You'll feel the urge to jump back in, to explain more, to make sure they understand. But that urge is exactly what you need to resist. Because on the other side of that discomfort is a different version of you. One that doesn't need validation to feel certain. One that doesn't rush to fill space. One that allows others to think whatever they want without reacting to it. And that's where real authority begins. When people realize you're not trying to control their perception, they stop looking for weaknesses. They stop testing you because there's nothing to grab onto. No hesitation, no over-explanation, just a clear presence that doesn't move under pressure. And over time, that presence becomes your identity. People begin to associate you with decisiveness, with calm, with control, not because you said it, but because you showed it consistently by saying less. At the end of the day, explaining yourself doesn't make you respected, it makes you negotiable. And the moment you become negotiable, people stop seeing you as someone with authority and start seeing you as someone who needs approval. That's the shift. Quiet, subtle, but powerful. So the next time you feel the urge to explain every detail, pause. Ask yourself, am I communicating or am I trying to be accepted? Because those are not the same thing. One builds respect, the other slowly erodes it. And the people who truly command attention, who naturally hold presence in any room, understand this at a deep level. They don't rush to fill silence. They don't chase agreement. They don't explain more than necessary. They decide, and they stand by it, even if it's misunderstood, even if it creates tension, because they know something most people don't. Respect isn't given to those who need it the least. It's given to those who need it the least. So from now on, move differently. Speak with intention. Say what needs to be said and nothing more. And watch how people start to respond to you without you having to say a single extra word.